Oh, it's going. Oh my gosh, it's going.
Sure. So I'll start with
Yeah, please.
the burning to me, the hardware stuff. All the hardware tricks du jour, the crank length, the stem length, the handlebar width, the coefficient slope bar. What else? Justin was that the big three?
Yeah, we've got cranks are on the agenda. We've
Okay,
got handlebar on the agenda.
Yeah.
We got a
Awesome.
couple things to talk about.
Sweet. All the
Yeah.
toys and the equipment. Yeah,
Right.
the contact points especially. Yeah. Come on in. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, please. Recovery.
Recover, like whether it's, I mean, I spent half my time in recovery now. So.
Recovery in the sense of periodization, recovery in the sense I've injured in something, how do I get over it?
Yeah, that kind of that. How do you stay where you can keep on? Are you gonna, like, whether it's fit for stretching or any kind of recovery?
Got it.
So.
Getting over and getting back on and staying healthy.
Yeah.
Sweet, please.
How about core and strength training for injury prevention?
Yeah.
Sweet. Core and strength training for injury prevention. We'll catch that. Yes.
Bodies in balance.
Oh, bye. I'm afraid I know that one all too well. Because I still look like a cyclist when I'm off of the bike. Yeah, bodies in balance. Awesome. What else? Cool. We should catch those. And if we don't, to your satisfaction, please bring them back up. But recovery, bodies in balance, strength training, and all the toys. Yeah, sweet. Okay, you've heard way too much about me already. Oh, I didn't know that was going to show up there. So, what do our cyclists want? What do you guys want? Most of us want to get on the bike and not hurt. And for that matter, even if we're aiming at power and speed, we still don't want to hurt because pain slows us down. And no matter at what age, we're still looking to go faster, right? We still want to be able to beat our friends up the hill and keep our PRs going up Old La Honda. So whether you're 41 and trying to take your next Tour de France, even with a herniated disc, with Chris, or whether you're 71, like with Steve, or just your first triathlon, like Michelle. So whatever you're at, these are our goals frequently. And how do we do all of these things at once? Well, in order to get that, we have to understand bodies in balance. We have to understand that this is really a connected chain from one end at the handlebars to the other end down at the foot. And this is Graham Overy's bike, and he was literally locked into that pedal. Yeah, I can imagine before clip this, there was just right through the shoe. But at the other end, we've got handlebars that need to be pointed straight ahead. And so if anything in the middle is twisted, especially if you're locked in your cleats, if anything in the middle is twisted, you end up with a twisted system in the middle. Let me see if I can't get this centered because it's catching about half of me. There we go. And a trauma is experienced through a system. When we hit the ground, we don't hit with one part of our body. Our whole system goes a little crazy. Way too loud. Sorry about that. There we go. We hit the ground, and I don't know how many people in here have traumas. Hit the ground in one way or another. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So we think about where we land. We land on our wrists. We land on our hips. We land on our heads, or all the above, if you're me. And that trauma just didn't hit that one place, but went into the opposite hip, went up into the clavicle, even if you didn't hit it. And so we have to talk about this chain as this interconnected system of fascia. What do I mean by fascia? If you've ever peeled an orange or ever pulled away chicken, you see that white surrounding layer just underneath that orange peel. Well, we have these fascial bags inside of our system that surround and go through muscles. And they go from one end of the body to the other. They go from one side of the body to the other, such that if we loosen up our calf muscles, the next thing you know, our hamstrings are more mobile. Or if our mid-thoracic spine is a little stiff, the next thing we know, our neck is getting uncomfortable. And doing these dissections where you see these long chains of muscles interconnected is pretty fun to do. Of course, muscles attach to bones and they stop at bones, but some of that weaving, that layering, that netting, if you will, continues on into the next. So we have an interconnected system, in short. What does that remind you of? One spoke affecting another spoke without ever touching the other spoke. And everyone in here knows that if you end up with a spoke that's too tight or too loose, you end up with a wheel that's out of balance. How tight are your quadriceps and your hip flexors as a cyclist, and how long and flexible are your hamstrings? And if we don't stay in balance, if our pecs get really tight, if our neck gets really tight, we start to not only have injuries and trauma, but we start to have these dysfunctions that slow us down. And the body is just a tensegrity system. This is a tensegrity model here on the right, where any one tug in a chain affects the rest of the chain. Or down to the knee. And if you hit the ground, what happens? As you push on that pedal, what happens? And how does it affect the rest of the chain all the way up to the pelvis? And as you'll see later on, even through the pelvis. A tensegrity system. Well, here's a good example of a client I was working with who came in and, well, guess what? He had pain in his butt. Really common, right? And he sat on the saddle in a twisted way. We use a pressure mapping system that allows us to evaluate how twisted, how much pressure is on one side or the other, whether you're going to like that saddle 200 miles down the road. Well, he's like, it must be my saddle, right? I'm like, but you got this tightness in your mid back and this stiffness and this twist. Why don't you lay down and we'll mobilize some stuff and use a foam roller here and let's see what happens to your saddle pressure. And it wasn't but 5 minutes later and he looked like this. Right? Instead of his pressure being off to one side and instead of the way he was moving was pretty erratic, which is what this shows, his pressure was pretty centered and he was pretty balanced. And he went home with the foam roller and his butt pain, his sit bone pain, got better a lot, got better a whole lot. Hello. Yeah, it's all good. We're going to hold questions till the end, but thank you so much for raising your hand. Twisted, yes. So what we end up with is essentially a bully. In this case, we had this gentleman's thoracic spine. The thoracic spine was what was yanking on the victim, pressure on his saddle. And so if I yanked on somebody's hair, I'm the problem. Someone's head hurts, but I'm the bully. And the head is just a victim of that system. And for this gentleman, it was his thoracic spine. For us, it could be a foot that's pronating and dropping in. It could be an old clavicle fracture that's twisting you. So I want everyone to stand up for a second. I want you to feel this yourself for a moment. So I want everyone to just imagine that they've got a very flat right foot. Their foot collapses for whatever reason. There's an old injury in the knee, a hip, or a pelvis. So just let your right foot drop. And as you let your right foot drop, let that affect the rest of your body. Don't try to keep yourself centered. Just let your right foot drop. And now notice how your body's turned to the left. Now keep your body turned to the left and reach out for the handlebars. The handlebars aren't over there, right? Yeah, now keep your body turned to the left, but bring the handlebars back in the center. Feel a twist? Yeah, and you can grab a seat. This is what happens so often, not just from the foot up. Actually, more common, it's from the clavicle down. It's from a couple of ribs down. It's from a broken femur down. I broke a couple of those. So feeling this in the system and understanding that it's a tensegrity system. And each piece affects the other piece. And the bummer is that we don't frequently know when it's happening. This gentleman, and you'll see who this is in a little bit, thought he was sitting quite centered. He thought he was pretty equal, but in his own words, when the stars are aligned, I can use my left leg. And he couldn't figure out why, despite a lot of therapy and a whole lot of work. So we need to go through this process. It's a fitting rehabilitation process in order to get healthy, because so often we jump back on the bike too early, or we jump back on the bike without appropriate flexibility or without being balanced. And we jump back on the bike in the same old position it was before we got stiff, or before we got weak, or before we got injured. And so we need to go through this rehabilitation fit process where at the beginning we start with an accommodated fit. It's a fit where the bike needs to match where the body is. Oh, I've got tight hamstrings. How far should I bend over? How short should that stem be? How high should those handlebars be? I've got tight hamstrings. How arrow can I get? I've got a weak core. Should I really be bending over in that position because I'm not being held up by my core, I'm being held up by my hands? So we start out with an accommodated fit where the bike matches the body's dysfunctions. But then in an ideal world, and we're going to talk about the middle of this, the rider changes. They get more flexible, they get stronger, they get over their injury, and then we move back into an optimal fit where all the rider's goals can be accomplished. They can be aerodynamic, they can be powerful, they can have a seat height that really allows their hamstrings to work well. We move back into an optimal. So this is, it's not a one and done process is what I'm trying to get at. And this is a process we try to work clients through over time. So what most people want is this. Yeah. The bummer is what I'm usually offering is that. Right? Go home with your exercises. And I hate to do them as much as anybody else. But the bummer is time on the foam roller, time doing stretching, time working on your core, time with a higher handlebar or a lower seat. We have to work our way back in. And I hate to say it, and boy, as I pass the 50-year-old number, it gets a little slower as we get older. It gets a little slower as we get older. So the first step is how much of this is we go through a detailed evaluation. We look at you on the bike. We look at your body. We say, okay, is this a bike issue? And are you going to be really happy when you walk out the door from a bike fit? Because, hey, if you've just got tight hamstrings, and yeah, they're not too bad, but your saddle height's off and your seat fore aft is off, or whatever is wrong with the bike, this is really nice because we get to fix the bike. And the body walks out and goes, I was pretty happy to begin with, and the bike fit was all screwed up, and that was causing most of your problems. But what usually happens is the other way around. We got a seat that's a little off, but it looks pretty good. But oh man, do we have a lot of problems on the other side. And so then we have to accommodate things, take care of that tight core by raising the handlebars or lowering the saddle for the hamstrings. We have to accommodate things by putting a stem on that might be a little too short for handling, but you can still handle it well and you can still handle it safely. So we go through an evaluation looking at you on the bike and off the bike to figure out what's driving the next thing. So what does that look like? Let's jump into comprehensive rehabilitation, the middle piece of this. Oh, hello. I guess I'm not going backwards. The middle piece of this, comprehensive rehabilitation, getting a person across the middle and back into an optimal. And we're going to talk about this a little bit in a minute. Number one, find out what's causing the problem. Number two, get things a little bit looser. Number three, you've been moving not very well for a long time. How do we retrain you how to push on the pedal? How do we remind the body how to walk again? And finally get back some power, some strength, some endurance so you can move well. So I'm going to brush through these pretty fast, but in short, most people miss this step. They assume because it hurts in the knee, it must be coming from the knee as opposed to the broken clavicle. Because it hurts in the neck, it must be coming from a stiff neck as opposed to the stiff low back and the weak core. Figure out where it's coming from, because too often we just keep cleaning up these messes and putting band-aids on the thing that hurts as opposed to actually the thing that's causing the problem. Next, things get tight, and boy do they ever. So this is tissues inside the body, and they just get sticky. It's like if my shirt got stuck to my skin, and now I'm trying to move in a way that's yanking on my skin. Our body sticks to itself. Hyaluronic acid is the oil inside of our fascia, and if that stuff dries up or we get traumatized, we end up like this.
These kind of fascial adhesions that either skin rolling or cupping can help decompress, make it so that these tissues, in this case the vastus lateralis, and
so that
these
stuck
kind of
spot, that stuck spot was a place on her IT band that she'd taken a fall on, and there was no reason why, there was a good reason why she couldn't move well. And we need to start to loosen these things up by pulling them off and by stretching them out, and not just by foam rolling them or not just by sitting in a chair. So big picture, we need to retrain movement. So what? We've loosened things up, like if you had a rock in your shoe and we've loosened up so that rock is gone, you've learned how to walk with a rock. You've fallen on your IT band, you've broken your hip, you've learned how to pedal with that tight IT band. And so that if we don't loosen things up and then retrain it, you're just going to go back to your old movement patterns. You're just going to keep doing what you've always done unless the brain, the conductor, starts to learn how to make this muscular orchestra play again well. It's going to go back to the same old buggy system. For the computer programmers in the world here, it's just like you've got a bug in the system and the brain just keeps running that bug. And we have to get the bugs out, get the brain to be able to tell the muscles what to do. And so you start to walk without that rock, and retraining those movement patterns are what that's about. Because our brain is programmable and we are the programmers, if you will. Said nicely in Bob Donatelli's words, he's a well-known PT in our world, we must activate the right muscles at the right time, in the right amount, in the correct sequence, and then learn how to let them go at the right time, all at 90 to 95 to 150 RPMs. So whether that's learning how to fold forward on the bike without rounding your back, whether that's learning how to keep your neck long, we need to remind the body how to move efficiently. And then finally, we've number one, figured out where it's coming from. Number two, we've loosened things up. Number three, we've retrained the body. And then number four, it's going to be really important to get strength on the bike, and particularly those muscles that get weak, like the gluteus medius, like some of the foot muscles, like our core. We need to learn how, in a very specific way, not just by riding, but by waking up. And this is one of my favorite, probably hip muscle strengthening exercises, working not only on the right leg, but also on the left leg. We have some of these videos. We'd be happy to send them out if people are interested. And that's going to be me talking and you don't want to hear me. So step number one, fit the bike to the body. Step number two, ideally the rider changes. Please do your homework. We'll fire you otherwise. Step number three, and I've been fired. Step number three, we refit the bike with fewer accommodations, meaning you've gotten a stronger core, you've gotten more flexible hamstrings, you've gotten some strength in your hip. So then we start to lengthen the stem, we start to lower the handlebars, we start to change the position of the cleat. We get you back into not an accommodated fit, but an optimal fit where you can get all your goals, aerodynamics and power plus comfort. Putting those two pieces together really takes a system that's a lot healthier than most of us are starting out with after we've taken one of those traumas. So why might an athlete getting lots of care feel like this is neutral and sit on a bike twisted? Because he hadn't hit all the spaces. He had been getting a lot of massage therapy. He'd been getting a lot of chiropractic, but he missed the retraining piece. His brain hadn't figured out how to put the orchestra together and push down on that pedal. And with an integrated approach, and it took the coach, it took the PT and the bike fitter, it took the team to put Christian back on the podium again. And so with that, That is me. We're going to, I think, hold questions for the end. And I'm going to pull up our next here.